Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of today's live chat. I'm Rebecca Fuhr. Before we begin with our questions, I'd like to remind everyone that the live chats are always on the second Tuesday of every month. But remember, we'll be rotating every other month with our times. One will be at 11 o'clock, and the next month will be at 3 o'clock. So next month on August 13th is our 11 o'clock chat. There's still plenty of time to get your questions in for today's live chat. As always, send them to DOC_questions. To protect your privacy, I only read your questions, never your name. So please keep those questions coming. And as always, if you ever want to go back and rewatch any of the live chats, I always post the recording on the front page of DocNet under Executive Director Live Chats. Good afternoon, Mr. Sansel. Welcome back. It's nice to see you.
Good afternoon, Rebecca. It's good to be back. I'm kind of excited. This is our first one in late afternoon, so kind of excited to see how the turnout is. This was the result of a suggestion, trying to mix up the time. So I'm kind of curious to see how it all is going to play out. For my opening remarks, I know we have a whole lot of questions, so I'll stay brief. I don't have a whole lot. As most of you know, we are in off session now for the legislative group. So we're, trying to spend some of that off season, building our relationships with them, trying to help them understand better, what we do here in the department. Last year, we opened up a visitation schedule for the facilities for the legislators, and we're going to do that again this year to just kind of get them out, get in the facilities, see the great staff we have, and help them understand, some of the asks that we ask. It's hard for them to really fully grasp the magnitude of the requests that we make, because many of them have never been into prison. So we try to offer that out to them. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to you to start in the questions.
Certainly. This person says, I work at Centennial, and I'm very concerned and honestly taken aback by the amount of trash that DOC is putting back into our environment. At Centennial, there's no recycling at all, and it's very concerning to me. I'm told there's no recycling at the other facilities as well. Additionally, why are we still using styrofoam?
Well, I'll start with concurring with you. I am concerned about the lack of recycling that we have for the department. It is something we have received. I received an email a little while ago asking about this, and we started looking into it then, and we're still in our exploration phase of how and what kind of programs to implement and how that will look in the department. And as far as the styrofoam, it kind of speaks to those three buckets that I talk about. Most prison systems use styrofoam. It's just what they've always done, especially during lockdowns and emergency feeding situations. So that is something that we can look into as well to see if there's an alternative out there that's better for the earth. So thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. This afternoon, we have Chief Human Resource Officer, Michelle Cottingham. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Rebecca. Hello, everybody.
We have quite a few questions for you this afternoon. Let's start with the first one. Ergonomics used to be a buzzword in the state of Colorado workplace. Are there any plans to conduct ergonomic compliance audits of the office areas to assist with reducing the amount of work-related workmen's compensation claims that result from poor ergonomic desks, chairs, keyboards, mice, and lack of support, etc.?
That's a great question, Rebecca. So employees who request an ADA accommodation due to a disability can submit their request via Form AR 1450-35A, and then that goes to our DOC Employee Relations email box. Those accommodations will be assessed in the interactive process. In regards to standard ergonomic assessments not related to a disability, there is an online assessment available to all employees through the State Office of Risk Management on their website. And you can also contact your benefits coordinator or the life safety office for more information. Employees may take an ergonomic assessment, and employees should review the flex place safety checklist to assess the suitability and safety of the workplace.
Thank you. This person says, I work 4 10-hour shifts. Why do we have to use 2 hours of our annual leave when we take our holiday? Why can't we just adjust our work schedule a week like we have in the past?
Well, that's spelled out in AR 100-37, specifically Section E, that in the event of a state observed holiday falls on a scheduled workday that is more than 8 hours, employees will utilize their own accrued leave, annual or comp time, for the difference between scheduled hours and the 8 hours of holiday. And I would encourage staff to work with their AA on that specific concern.
Are we able to verify someone's seniority ranking for vacation roster purposes in our own department? For example, if someone was a state employee with another agency and comes to DOC and is ranked higher than us, how can we determine if they had a break in service? I've run into this situation a couple of times, but how do we know if that things are being calculated correctly without relying on supervisors or management? There have been several instances where we believe that they may not be truly ranked correctly, but it's not a comfortable situation to question a new employee or management.
Yes, employees can absolutely contact OHR, and we can review and verify total state service. And I would remind staff of our general mailbox, which is DOC_HR_forms at statecolorado.us, and then we can provide that information.
Thank you. Who is responsible for determining the job classification that is receiving the 2.8% raise?
Another great question. I think we'll see kind of a trend today of a lot of questions about the critical staffing incentive. For background, the state of Colorado and COWINS came together to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement back in January of 2021, and then that went into effect in November of 2021. We frequently refer to this agreement as a statewide partnership agreement, or PA, because this contract is between state of Colorado and WINS. Article 31.7 governs the critical staffing needs incentive, and it specifically indicates which positions are covered. And I'll review that list one more time: correctional officers, nurses, state teachers, social workers, legal assistants, health professionals, as well as healthcare techs. And so that's how we arrived at those that received the 2.8%.
Thank you. A list of these, or some of these other questions are going to have to do with some of those as well. So let's work through these. As of right now, CSTS does not receive more than the minimum attention for retention, but we are always short across maintenance, food service, and housekeeping. And still, retention bonuses come out and we are not included in the monthly percentages. And now we are banned from doing overtime once the budget comes out tight. What incentives do we have to work these positions when we move to security and sit in an office and watch food service and maintenance struggle to get their job done, when we make way more just by being in a different area, doing less work most of the time?
So I think this question really references the critical needs incentive that I just talked about in Article 31.7. The PA specifically identifies those classifications that receive an incentive. Now, in regards to the retention incentive, that is for all permanent employees, and they will receive this incentive later this year in the fall.
Can you explain what is meant by non-base building, and what is the proposed 2.8 in addition to across the board 3% raise?
So non-base building means this is not part of your base salary. It's a one-time payout or temporary pay. So the 2.8% is a temporary incentive based on Article 31.7 that identifies those positions I explained earlier. Now, in comparison, the 3% across the board, you'll hear reference to ATB, is a salary increase that is part of base salary if your salary is below the salary maximum on DPA's compensation plan. So kind of apples and oranges there.
Thank you for clarifying that. Why is there an incentive pay for teachers when they work a post? However, case managers are just expected to work a post with no incentive and then catch up on their job without help afterwards. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think there might be a little confusion there, Rebecca. Similar to case managers, state teachers are non-exempt and eligible for overtime. Teachers do not receive additional pay to cover post. However, they are eligible for that 2.8%, the critical staffing incentive that we talked about a little earlier in 31.7.
I know you went over retention incentive and if it's a one-time incentive, but when will we get it?
Yeah, the retention incentive is a one-time payment and it's slated to be paid in November of 2024.
Thank you. Thank you. How is promotional pay determined? Will it be standard now with the step raises that a promotion is a low pay? Oh, hold one sec. Let me start over here. How is promotional pay determined? Will it be standard now with the step raise that a promotion is a low percentage increase if the person promoting is above their new step minimum? How is that attracting promotional candidates and increase retention for CDOC?
But the step pay plan that went into effect on July 1st is designed to address pay equity issues, alleviate pay compression, reduce bias, and address employee pay progression through the pay range based on time and job series. When an employee promotes, their step placement in the new classification is reviewed to determine the job offer amount. And I want to remind staff that that calculator on GPA's website still exists. So when you go to apply for a position, I would use that as a reference point.
Thank you.
And Rebecca, if I could,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Did you say something?
so we know that this is getting a lot. There's a lot of questions and concern. We share some of those questions and concerns. But this is a DPA-driven change, and I can tell you we are relaying the questions and concerns that you're asking as well as those that we have. We're relaying them to DPA to try to work through it. We can't really do a lot of workarounds to circumvent this step process because DPA designed it, is DPA's rule, and we have to comply with DPA's rules. But I just want everybody to know that we share a lot of the same questions with the new process, and we are trying to get answers to those. Go ahead, Matt.
No.
You muted. You muted, Matt.
Rookie.
Yeah, I turned my camera off and my mic, whatever. You guys figured it out. I think it's probably relevant to this conversation. There's a question a little further down asking about what, with the legislature and leadership putting all these new things into place like family and the relief factors haven't really been, they haven't been addressed. Just like Andre said with the step raises, we've shared the information with our sister agencies with DPA because they have the controlling power in that. And essentially, I'm trying to boil this down to where, because I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody. They understand that there's issues, but we don't want to knee jerk and just say, okay, DOC has these issues, let's fix it. And then maybe DHS comes back because, there's multiple agencies that have 24/7 postings. So they're collecting information so that they can make a more deliberate assessment of how we fix this and how we address. I can't give you a timeline because they haven't given us a timeline because I don't think they can until they collect sufficient information to really start to dive into that. But just understand that we very much realize that relief factors need to be recalculated. We put some people into training with the feds to help us to start learning how to do our own internal assessments as efficiently as possible. And you'll start to see that rolling out, because we want to inform ourselves in these conversations when they do occur about what is the relief rate? What do you think this needs to be? We have to come to the table with some strong data to say, this is what it is. So when you see that start to happen in your facilities and offices, that's why. It's not like we're trying to go through and figure out how to cut staff, or it's to truly identify what we have. If we have the schedules laid out in the most efficient way possible, and then after that will inform us, so when we can go to the table with DPA to talk about those relief factors, we'll have a good amount of data to back us up. So there's no quick fix. There's no, oh yeah, 2 months from now we're going to have this, guys. But do know that we're working on it. And government work is frustrating, and I'm not trying to be condescending. I mean, bureaucracy is frustrating because you have to take it through so many different steps. So just understand we're in the steps, and this isn't something we're going to let go, because we know how significantly it impacts people in their day-to-day.
Thank you. Just so everybody knows what you're talking about, you did reference this question, so let's just address it and answer it while you brought it up, and so everyone knows. The question is that you referred to, please address the compound issue of staff shortages that the state has created. Our leaders have added additional FMLA, FMLI, increased the holiday given, increased the vacation given, and yet have not increased the relief percent factor for staffing. Staff have more authorized time off than ever, and we are still battling to just meet the minimum staffing requirements due to the lack of staff retention. Please address what our leadership is doing to increase the relief percentage to help alleviate the additional staffing issue they have created.
I think I covered it pretty much.
Yeah, just so that everyone knows what question that was that you were referring to. That was the question. So thanks for answering that. We go back up here and get back to Ms. Cunningham. Let's switch gears a little bit and answer the next question. What is the most efficient way of reporting harassment by the management team, especially concerning possible retaliation?
Thank you, Rebecca. AR 145005 outlines the process for reporting harassment, discrimination, hostile work environment, and/or retaliation. Reports of possible 145005 violations should be reported to a supervisor, OHR, or OIG. Supervisors are required to submit any reports of possible violations to the appointing authority, who will notify OHR, specifically the Employee Relations Unit. We refer to them as ERU. ERU will determine if further investigation is necessary or if the situation can be handled directly by the appointing authority. Questions about this process can be submitted to DOC_employee relations at statecolorado.us.
And I want to add one thing to that. So we've experienced a couple of hiccups where things have been reported to supervisors and managers, and they've tried to handle it on their own. There's no room for that. If it gets reported to you as a supervisor, as a manager, do your part and report it to HR, OIG, your appointing authority, because that process is in place for a reason. So no one in that chain can stop that process. It has to run the complete process. So if you're a manager or supervisor and something gets reported to you, make sure that you pass that on. Get that off of your back, pass it on, run it through the process, and let the process run its course. And as always, if you've utilized this process and it's not working, there's a million ways to get a hold of any of us that's on the screen. You have my work cell, you have my email address, you have the email address of everyone that's on the screen. So start with that process. If that process fails, then please reach out and let us know. But I want to reiterate to the managers, and supervisors, make sure that you do your piece, push that on. We've had a couple of instances recently where, you know, good intentions might have been there, but they try to stop the process at their level. And there's no room for that in this process.
Well said. Thank you so much, Mr. Stansel. For those that have received the raise based on years of service in our current position, will there get any other raise based solely on years of service as well?
The step pay program effective 7/1 is calculated based on years in the employer and job series. There is not an existing plan for an additional pay increase based on years of service.
In the academy, you encourage staff not to quit the department they are working in. If it isn't for them, you invite them to move around and find out what works best for them because DOC has everything. But you give up the step raise only to have those who have been in the same department for X amount of time. It should be all DOC time, shouldn't it?
So I'd like to clarify a couple points on that. In accordance with 31.6 of the partnership agreement, employees shall be placed on the step in the pay plan, and that placement should be based on time and job series. So that's specifically called out in the partnership agreement. To meet this requirement, the Department of Personnel Administration, DPA, is a state agency tasked with calculating and implementing the step pay program and not the Department of Corrections. Step placement is based on time and job series, again, not in a specific department. Even when with steps considered, we continue to encourage staff to move around and find the best job that works for them.
Thank you. When are we going to get the new HSA debit cards with our carried over HSA balance? My Optum HSA debit card was inactive several weeks ago, and I haven't been paying out of pocket for appointments.
So thank you for that. We were informed by DPA that the cards were sent out by the HSA vendor for delivery. If you have not received your card, please reach out to DOC_benefits, and they can check on the status for you.
Thank you. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk to our Director of Adult Parole, Dave Wolfsberger. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Rebecca.
How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. When will you release the outcome of the culture survey that was instigated by Deputy Director McGrath for the Colorado Springs and Parole Office?
So I need to clarify that the climate survey was initiated by Deputy Executive Director McGrath in concert with me. The goal continues to be creating and enhancing feedback loops, addressing concerns in a timely manner, and identifying opportunities for additional staff input. I'll be reviewing the contents of the climate survey with applicable staff in the near future.
Thank you. The Parole Division currently has several positions which allow those individuals to work out of the office of their choice. However, there are many more of us within this division whose jobs could similarly be performed from anywhere. In light of the upcoming operational changes and cutting back of flexible work arrangements, is there any chance that the executive leadership would consider allowing more of us with these anywhere positions the option to work out of an office that would lessen our commute depending on space availability? This would result in more actual office time while still providing significant relief from those high cost of living in the Denver metro area.
So any request to change office location should be submitted through the appropriate appointing authority within the division, and then it'll be reviewed by parole leadership on a case-by-case basis. We'll consider the individual's request and determine if the request meets the business needs, most importantly, and if there is sustainable office space availability in the proposed location.
Thank you. There have been several staff voicing concerns regarding the level of security we have at the Broadway office. After recently visiting headquarters in the Colorado Springs, we're seeing firsthand the level of security they have, and we're wondering why in an office we have executive staff, there's not better security system in place. The key readers were removed and everyone and anyone now have full access to the third floor. Additionally, when walking on the walking through the front door every morning, we find current security staff not even bothering to look up from their cell phones to see who's coming in the front door. The building is not a safe environment, and we're hoping it doesn't take a terrible event to change things.
So everyone should know the level of security at all parole offices is of utmost importance. Key card readers remain in place for front door entry before and after regular business hours, and security staff are stationed at the front entrance during regular business hours. Parole leadership will address the concerns you identified regarding security staff and will remedy noted deficiencies to ensure security staff remain attentive and vigilant in their duties at all times. Please reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to conduct a walkthrough with you at the Broadway office so we may further discuss.
Thank you. Considering the current parole staff shortages and the extended duration required to get parole officers post-certified, has leadership considered the possibility of introducing case managers to alleviate ancillary duties from parole officers? This approach could potentially help decrease burnout from large caseloads and enhance productivities within the division of parole.
I appreciate the suggestion. Just be aware that a number of suggestions, including this one, are actively being considered to assist with parole workloads throughout the division.
Thank you. Let's turn this over to the Director of Finance and Administration, Ashley Clark. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Why do CSTS staff continue to be left out of these incentives? We've gone through the last year with other facility staff getting extra money without us getting any of it. Here at Sterling, we're down 50% of our staff. With CO staff getting extra pay, there's still no draw to staff getting to convert over to CSTS position. This question was also asked in regards to case managers.
So again, the temporary pay differential, that 2.8% this fiscal year, is outlined in section 31.7 of the statewide partnership agreement. I know that's been listed in an email that we've sent out before, and we've talked about it at previous live chats and today previously as well. CSTS and case managers are not called out in 31.7 of the statewide partnership agreement. Negotiations are currently ongoing for the new statewide partnership agreement. And I do want to say that CSTSs will receive the retention incentive in November, as long as they stay through November.
Thank you. Let's talk to the Inspector General, Danny Lake. Good afternoon.
Hello, Rebecca. Thank you. Thank you for this question. This was a good question, and
I haven't asked it yet.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I was reading the question myself.
Let me ask it, and then you can answer it. I only have one.
Hey, I was excited about this question. I was excited. I'm sorry. I was excited.
Let me ask your question.
All right. Okay.
Why are we taking UAs away from the department when this is an essential part of how we deal with ongoing and increasing drug threat? This is putting staff at a greater risk.
Okay, now, thank you for that question. And it's a great question, and I had to write some things down. So I'm going to be reading a little bit, but there's a lot of information here that I have to share. So I want to make sure I get it right. The OIG or the department is not taking away all UAs. Staff and offender safety is a priority, and stopping drugs from being introduced in the facility is also a priority to us all. The OIG, prison operations, and clinical surgeons are working diligently on ways to combat these drug issues and to be stewards of taxpayers' dollars while being physically responsible. UAs will still be used in the TC program, the MAT programs, or any other program that requires random UAs. The OIG will continue to work diligently to combat the CDOC drug issues by being more proactive with visitor staff interdiction and other drug deterrence techniques. I can assure you that anyone that we can prove that introduces any contraband, including drugs that violate the law, will be arrested and charges will be filed. If you have any ideas, don't hesitate to email me at danny.lake@state.co.us, or you can call me on my cell phone number, 719-240-6633. And also, if you have any ideas or you have investigators in your facility, whoever wrote this question, please go to them and tell them your concerns, your ideas, and we will go from there. And also, unfortunately, the felony law, the felony crime is introduction of drugs, introduction of contraband. That's a felony. Once drugs get into the facility, if they're there, that's possession. That's considered a misdemeanor. That's considered a misdemeanor at this point. Okay, so a Suboxone found on an offender is a misdemeanor. Therefore, misdemeanors are handled by the COPD process, the administrative process. So our focus will continue to be on introduction of drugs and the felony crimes at this point. But do not hesitate to reach out to us so you can be a part of solving the problem. So we're open to your suggestions, but we're not getting rid of UAs.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
No worries.
Just a reminder to everyone, you can still send your questions to DOC_questions throughout the entire chat. Let's switch over to our Director of Clinical Services, Lacy Mundy. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi. Can you explain why there is no recognition for clinical services staff for promotions? When custody and control staff promote, they typically get a certificate, a pinning, recognition at roll call, and a picture. Conversely, clinical services staff don't get any type of recognition when they promote at all. With continued issues with morale and staff retention in clinical services, small things like this could make a difference.
Okay, this is great feedback and a great question. I did not realize that this wasn't happening to the level that it needs to be. So we will take this suggestion and incorporate it into promotions within clinical services. And also, whoever this was that submitted it, if they would like to reach out to me directly, maybe they can give me some specific feedback on how we could incorporate promotional opportunities differently within clinical services.
I love that. Thank you. I would like to reach out. I would like to find out if CDOC is still looking for additional coverage of groups after hours. And if so, what is the current compensation being offered in addition to one's regular salary?
Yes, there are lots of opportunities for different additional coverage, and the rate is $75 per session. So that's either group or individual if you work outside of your normal work shift. And if you want to inquire with your supervisor or the HSA at the facility you work at, they could probably identify where coverage needs are and get you connected with the right people to sign up for those shifts.
Great. Let's take it over to prison ops. Director Smith, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let's take it down to your questions. My question is about inmate dress code at the facility I work at, and I'm sure most others. Inmates are allowed to wear shorts, t-shirts, sweatpants, tennis shoes, etc. Basically dressed like civilians, which is fine inside the walls, but what happens when we have an escape? What would we tell local law enforcement?
So first I want to thank the staff member that asked this question, as it truly demonstrates that we're thinking about good security practices, and we welcome these questions at any time. I'm guessing that we're referring to Administrative Regulation 850-11. Page 6 actually kind of discusses what that looks like, but to answer this question more directly, if we did have somebody that escaped wearing the personal clothing or what we call honors unit clothing, we would pass all information on to the local law enforcement. We would look at video cameras to have a better understanding of what clothing that we were sharing or that they were wearing that day, and then we would share that information as well with the personal characteristics and all of the other information that we have collected from our staff. If there is something specific that you are worried about, we always recommend that you talk with your supervisors or their management team, but you're also welcome to reach out to the deputy director as well for that facility to get more information or share your concerns.
Thank you. Why are support staff still being forced to work custody and control positions? We were told this would end in the new fiscal year.
And so I guess my first consideration for that is I'm not sure exactly what was shared that would lead anybody to believe that this would discontinue at the beginning of the fiscal year, because while we see that staffing levels are improving, much like the question earlier that Mr. Hansen responded to on family leave, vacation time, additional holidays, all of those have an impact on our staffing levels and how we utilize our staffing. And so with those additional days and some other issues that happen within facilities, we are still having to rely on our support staff to help us meet the staffing levels to maintain our facility safety. We understand that this creates some disruption in your regular duties, and we're very, very thankful for all the work and support that you all provide our security staff in the department. And again, just want to share how grateful we are for the support that you guys provide us.
This staff member is curious if we could start having legal mail sent to offender tablets. Legal mail and our concerns over confidentiality seems to lead a very confused introduction, seems to lead it to being very used introduction method for drugs into our facilities.
So this is a great question. And this really comes from a standpoint of security concerns. And we know that we've had instances where legal counsel has utilized this kind of correspondence to introduce drugs. However, not all legal mail can be restricted to electronic communication to tablets, just based on the rights of incarcerated individuals to have privileged and confidential communications, and that we can't limit that to an email to a tablet. So the best response that I can really give you is to follow the AR 300-38, which is our mail policy. Shift commanders and IG will be immediately notified if staff suspect any type of legal mail contraband or introduction, and that this needs to be a practice that we continue, and that we thank you again for these questions, because it really does demonstrate that you guys are being vigilant and aware and really trying to implement strong security practices. And so just thank you for these questions and your awareness.
Let's go to the email box real quick and see if anyone can jump into any of these questions now. If you guys want to jump in, anyone is welcome to do that. Is there a plan to get the essential education program into the tablets for GED students to study in their cell house?
So prison programs is looking at what opportunities will be available through tablet or submission of Chromebooks on an offline format. Obviously, there's a cost component to all of that, and so just really trying to ensure that we have resources available to support that, but it is in consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Cottingham, this might be for a question for you. This is a clarification question from your last chat. On the last chat, Ms. Cottingham stated that the unfair step raises were a unique situation that one staff was experiencing. With that said, does DPA realize that hundreds, if not thousands of staff have been cheated out of a raise? Will DPA ever take this issue seriously?
So what I can say is that we are taking step pay serious. I think DPA is as well, and that is that they want to use the consistent calculation methodology. And so that's why they spent the time creating it, and it is now being utilized. As GED Hansen indicated, we are, collecting comments, sharing our feedback with DPA so that they can, assess the effectiveness of the pay step program.
Thank you. With the passing of the House bill about not having overtime after 8.5, if it's our regular shift, when will we be going to 12s?
So I'll jump in and just briefly touch on this. So as we've talked in previous live chats, this is a much larger topic than just being able to make a transition this quickly. We have asked all facility management teams to review what that would look like and bring proposals for us to look at and move forward. But please know that there are some positions or some facilities that a 12-hour shift will not work at, or will be much slower to implement if the proposals or considerations are viable.
What is the status of the peer-led programming audit? I will not be able to attend the Q&A, but want to watch it later.
So again, I'll take this, and if anybody else has anything they'd like to add, please do. We are in the process of finalizing curriculum reviews for all of the peer-led programs that have been identified, and then we'll be sharing new policy and new curriculums that we will, I guess, swap out for curriculums that did not meet the criteria or that allowed for us some vulnerability in language and terminology that could be auditable. So we hope within the next couple months to be rolling that out.
Thank you, Director. Is the clothing incentive for uniform staff only?
I can answer this one. No, the clothing incentive goes to all staff as part of the retention incentive in November. So it's just for all full-time staff who are employed in the department.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Director.
So are they asking about the clothing incentive or just the retention incentive?
It said clothing incentive.
Okay.
Yeah. Clothing incentive for you. It said, is the clothing incentive for uniform staff?
And I am referring to the $150 that is going to all staff in November. That'll show up in the November 29th paycheck, regardless if you're monthly or biweekly.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. Social workers received the 2.8% raise. What are social workers?
So I'll take that. The social work series describes work in the fields of social work and counseling. Physicians assess mental health and behavioral characteristics, assess treatment needs. They develop treatment plans and educate, counsel individuals and groups based on professional theories and principles. Additional information on this particular job classification can be found on the Colorado Department of Human Resources website, which is dhr.colorado.gov.
There really is no confusion with the case managers. We know we aren't getting the 2.5%, but we don't know why. Can the question of why we aren't getting the 2.5% be answered, please?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to what I indicated earlier. In Article 31.7 of the partnership agreement, it specifically identifies the classification which receive the critical staffing incentives. And unfortunately, case managers are not one of the classifications identified.
If I take a voluntary demotion from my CSTS 1 spot, will I be recognized monetarily for my 17 years of service?
This is probably one where it's better to reach out to HR directly because there's some unknowns here. But answering this, the step pay program utilizes time and job series, and employees are not paid lower than their step placement. There is not a lower classification than CSTS 1. Therefore, we are assuming that you're wanting to demote outside of that job series. And as such, you won't take your 17-year step that you have in the CSTS series into a new series. But again, that's not knowing all the particulars. So I would really suggest this employee reach out to that COC _forms email box, and we can answer that question directly.
Thank you. In some of our meetings, it was said that remote would not be gotten rid of because we need things besides pay to attract new staff. Now that our remote has been taken away, how do staff trust executive management when two different messages are being said? Remote staff can work 1 day a week. We need to address those people who are abusing it instead of punishing the whole. Flexible schedule is sometimes the reason why we stay, since the pay is not as good as other departments. Is there a governor's incentive regarding remote work? This should be the new rule, not apply to everyone and not just officers.
Well, I'll start and then I'll turn it over to HR or whomever else wants to chime in. So since my arrival, I've consistently indicated that remote work is actively being reviewed to ensure the Division of Adult Parole is performing our tasks as effectively and efficiently as possible, especially those tasks involving the supervision of parolees. As indicated in my notification to Division of Parole staff, civilian staff are still permitted the option to work remotely 1 day per week under the guidelines of my notification to staff.
So will DOC as a whole be getting rid of remote work now that parole has?
Not as a whole, but we are reviewing remote work across the department. So there's no blanket guidance from me saying get rid of remote work. But we are looking at remote work as a whole to make sure that we're being good stewards of the government, of the taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. Sorry, my form keeps jumping up and down here. Let's see. For the reclassification from the health professional series to the social work counselor series, there are several of us now that qualify for the social work counselor 3s due to being licensed. We are currently classified as social work counselor 2s. Will this be corrected, retroactively be applied?
So I would encourage employees that meet the minimum qualifications for the higher level position to apply for the specific position on governmentjobs.com.
Thanks. Has the incentive for nurse 3s to pick up extra shifts been discussed? If it has, what is the timeline to see an improvement?
I have not discussed this, but I'll look into it and see what I can find out.
Thank you, Director. Just for clarification, it used to be a 10% increase of the previous position when promoted. Is this still not the practice?
No, I sent out an email back on January 9th that indicated a certain percentage increase is not a practice in our department.
Thank you for that clarification. Dress code was relaxed during COVID, but are now open-toed shoes allowed in headquarters offices, or are they still not allowed?
There's a long pause in answering this because I don't think any of us has really thought about open-toe shoes in headquarters. It's something we'll have to discuss. Yeah, I'll just leave it as that. It's something we'll have to discuss.
Okay, we'll put it on hold. Per AR 1450-31, non-uniform employees, contract workers, and volunteers are required to wear footwear that is appropriate and in good repair. So maybe that will help you make that choice. Let's see. Why do we continue to talk about WINS agreement with this issue instead of actually what is right? Why is management not talking about changing this? Why is management not talking about changing this to the right thing and not just what is negotiated? CSTS 1 and case management are not considered critical according to management.
I'll start off and I'll let someone else answer this. I'm going to break this question down in pieces. Once the WINS agreement become an agreement, then we're bound to comply with it. So it's not about what we're talking about. It's not about whether we choose to go with WINS or it's an obligation. Once the WINS agreement is agreed to, we have to follow it just like we would any other statute or rule or regulation. So this kind of insinuates that we're trying to choose the lesser of the two evils. A WINS agreement is binding, just like any other statute or any other law that we have to follow.
Thank you for that clarification. You just described, in previous question, you just described what case managers do when you read what a social worker is. How are we not considered social workers? We are not officers. We are not social workers. What are we?
So what I would suggest on that is to go to the ghr.colorado.gov website and look at the classification definition for both case managers as well as social workers, because they are different classifications. And if a person feels that their classification is incorrect, they should consult with their appointing authority. One thing to keep in mind is that social workers are licensed through DORA, and so that is a minimum qualification or requirement, whereas the case manager does not have that requirement.
And I know we're getting close to time here, and maybe you can answer this very quickly, Ms. Cunningham. Why not make time in service for step pay increases? This discourages promotions.
I feel like we've talked about this a lot today. We're bound by the partnership agreement, and it specifically called out, the time that's going to be considered. So we really have to adhere to that.
Thank you.
And if I could just add one thing to that, please know that this partnership agreement is a statewide agreement, that this isn't just inclusive of the Department of Corrections. This is inclusive of all state agencies. It is a state agreement that we are obligated to meet the criteria within.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Stansel, would you like to end on this question, and maybe you'd like to add some additional words after this? This last question is, can you please describe in words what the Colorado Department of Correction looks like in 2030?
That's a really good question. We're now in 2024, and that's 6 years away. I can tell you what our goal as your exec team now is to try to leave things better than we found them. And that's nothing against previous administrations. There's always, when people come behind us, there's going to be things that they're going to say, what was that administration thinking about? And let's try to fix it. It's always the goal to try to make it a safe environment for everyone that works in this environment, everyone that's incarcerated in this environment. If you have been paying attention to anything with this exec staff, we really care about staff. We're really trying to make sure that we create an environment where we're doing all we can to make things better for the staff. And we also have the obligation to make sure we're doing things better, and we're taking on our responsibility for the incarcerated population as well. So to give you in what it look like in 2030, that's a very challenging question that I'll think about and maybe try to address even deeper in the next lively chat. But I can tell you what our main goal is, to try to leave things as best as we possibly can during our tenure in our positions. So there may not be the in-depth answer that person is looking for. Like I said, I'll put some more thought behind it. I can go and give you the political answers, but that's not who I am. I don't do a lot of politics. I shoot straight, and my overall goal is for people to be safe, for people to work in an environment that's safe, and to try to create an environment where people want to be in. And that's because no matter what decision you make, and no matter what good you try to do, there's always someone that's going to see the other side of that and see it as not a good thing. So, but I want to kind of wrap up by saying there's a lot of questions about why certain classifications weren't included in the co-wins, and why some received things that others didn't. Like I said earlier, whenever we share some of those concerns. And we've made suggestions. I come from a system where the step increases were based on time and service. So when this one came out, I did have conversations with DPA, I had conversations with the Gov's office, and unfortunately, they're sticking to what they've decided, and they have reasons for that, which I won't bore you with all their reasons. But just know that when we see things or we see ways of improving things that come to us, we discuss those. We take them forward. We give examples of how it's impacting. I mean, I remember when we were sitting in the cabinet meeting and it came out that they were giving an additional holiday for Juneteenth. And a lot of departments were super excited about that. And I was excited too. The staff are getting more time with their loved ones. But also the thing that came to my mind is, well, we can't just close our doors and say, okay, everybody go home. So how is this additional holiday going to impact the already, the other situations we already have going on with coverage and things like that? So those are always things that come to our mind when we get and we receive these things. We're always looking at how is this going to impact our department, and we do pushback when we can, and provide examples when we can. But just know, no one is singling out DOC and saying this is, this is for DOC or this is, this is to impact DOC. That's not happening. They're making decisions on a broad level for the entire state government, and every agency is having to figure out how they operationalize those changes that come to us. So I welcome the feedback. I welcome these questions. And we will try to clarify as much as we possibly can whenever we get questions where it seems like, there may be some misunderstanding about it. So thank you all for your questions. Thank you for continuing to use your voice. And I encourage you all to continue to do so.
With that, we'll see you on August 13th for another edition of the live chat. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.